Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the second in our new season of the Inworld Review. This is a program where we look at arts and destinations and people in on the hypergrid. It's sort of the hypergrid being the system, the network, as it were, that connects a whole load of individual grids together, provided that, of course, that they're also run on the Open Simulator platform. This week we've got some guests from a role play sim called Genesis Roleplay, not to be confused with the other grid called Genesis. And they were in, well, I was over there earlier, and it's an English town called Plymouth. Although it doesn't look much like the Plymouth I know. But we'll come to that later. First of all, we have a bit of our housekeeping to take care of. I'll just introduce everybody on the panel here first. James Atloud, who's on my right, is our wonderful videographer, a technical wizard, mixing all this vision and audio and everything together. Right, so welcome, James.
Oh, thanks, Mel. I'll try to not be any problems today.
Okay. And oh, my name is Mal Burns, by the way. I'm sitting in the middle of these other two. On my on the left-hand side, there's Ember, the wonderful Queen of Safari, and all sorts of wonderful things. My co-host.
Mostly cleaning up behind the animals. That's my principal job, and I don't promise there won't be any trouble tonight, unlike
Right.
James. But
I
it's good
won't.
to be here.
I won't go to detail about what the animals may leave to clean, but
Mostly paper and
oh,
cans.
oh, that's right.
Yes,
Okay, not the
they are
other.
house trained. Yeah.
Right, fair enough. Okay, and we'll be talking to them more fully in a little while. But also on the couch here from Genesis Roleplay Grid, we have Snappy Snaps. Hello, Snappy.
Hello, it's nice to meet you all.
And we have Metal Tango, who I'm told I must refer to as Tango.
Yay.
Hello. Thank you, and it's good to be here.
And somebody we have had here before. We're familiar with her, and Lavia Lavine. Welcome, Lavia.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here.
Yeah. So let's get down to business. As I said, we talk about arts and destinations, and of course the people concerned here on the hypergrid. And let's see, where should we start? I think we'll start with our short little intro that we have every week here about the hypergrid happenings. So for that, I'm going to hand over to Thurza.
Yeah, another week of happenings in the hypergrid, and of course, there's a lot going on this summer and fall. And one of the biggest things that's been happening, of course, is the OS Fest. Uh, that began last Friday, as you probably all know. The Open Sim Fest is a jazz and blues inspired event this year. Last year it was more of an open theme to do with fantasy and sci-fi, things like that. This is a little bit more um, specific, but people have done some incredible work. You definitely should go and see the Tina Bay build, which is one of the most incredible pieces of art in Open Sim, I consider it, anyway, to do with blues. Just really beautiful. Anyway, so the whole event began last Friday. It's continuing until the end of the month. Most events begin around sort of this time of day. However, the grid event calendar, which you can find on the website, will show you that you start at about 9 a.m. Second Life time with all kinds of deals and steals, tours of the various builds. There are events on satellite grids, so you can go and see merchants, you can go and see performances, and generally enjoy the whole experience of OpenSim, rather than just the music, which of course there is plenty of as well on the 4 event sims. If you look on OpenSim World, you will find all kinds of musical guests mentioned. So check out the events page on OpenSim World, or just go to the website of OpenSim Fest, or just go over there to the grid, which has got the name right there on the poster, as you can see. One of the things that's happening is tomorrow, many of us knew Veritas, Barry McMaster, who very sadly and tragically died in a fire last December. She was very active in OpenSim, and of course she was helped out quite a lot last year in OS Fest, so she made a lot of friends over there. Her passing was an incredible blow to many of us. So what they've done is decided, Lunaria has decided to hold a sort of memorial, and she's made a nice little build right there inside the Luxor part of Unobtainium. You can go and see that if you wish. That's tomorrow. So don't miss that. It's at about 2 p.m. Second Life time, so a little bit later than this time of day. And that's on Monday, tomorrow. Another thing you might want to do on Tuesday is go sailing. Don't forget Mode Parlay, she has those loose cannon events. All kinds of stuff going on the high seas over on Discovery Grid. It happens pretty much every Tuesday, I think until December the 14th. So lots of fun, all free. Just go there, turn up early, get a boat and be part of the fun. That runs from 4 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. Second Life time. So a little bit later than this event right now. Of course, we have the safari on Wednesday. Now, due to some technical difficulties here in OS Grid with the Safari Clubhouse sim, you can go there and get the landmarks, but if you experience any kind of a problem, we do have a plan B, and that is over on Avacon Grid. We have another region. It's just called Safari, and you can find the landmarks there. There will be people there on Wednesday night to meet you. And of course we have two great destinations. One is of course Lavia's Lioness Den. As you can see there on the poster, it's represented by that wonderful rhinoceros who came to greet me. And the second destination is of course the 50th anniversary of Kitely is this week. So Elan has agreed to meet with us and have a chat, a bit of a dance, and answer some questions about how the grid got started, or comments about the longevity of Kitely. So bring a present if you will. I'm sure he would appreciate it. One more thing, we have of course over on Barefoot Dreamers Grid plenty of dance events. So apart from OS Fest, which of course has loads of dance events too, you can go and see Dave King. He will be performing, as he does every other Friday, on Barefoot Dreamers Grid. So as you can see, there's quite a range of things happening. And if you have something happening on your grid, whether it's a party or an opening, a project, some kind of class that you teach, and you would like us to mention it on this show, please just let me know, and I am a DM will be fine, and we'll include it in Hypergrid Happenings.
Well, thank you, Thesa. Croak, croak. Sorry, yeah, I'm croaking all of a sudden. Right, obviously you mentioned OS Fest there, and a timely reminder, if you're watching us on YouTube, that if you go back to last week's show, we did actually devote pretty much the whole show to sort of telling you all about OS Fest. While I've got our center screen up here, I'll just click. Thursday actually has two blogs. Well, one of them sort of me as well. We have hgSafariblogspot.com. So that's hgsafari.blogspot.com. We have a post there about Open Sim Festival coming. And we have another blog for the Hypergrid International Expo, which is coming up in a few weeks. And that's hieopensim.blogspot.com again. So hieopensim.blogspot.com. And so it's also posted here an article on some of the art, which will be at the HIE thing. I'm scrolling down in it now, but obviously we haven't got time to give you a huge slideshow or anything. Also, Safari, which happened this previous week, Thursday's got reports up for that too. Safari goes to Tropicana, is the first one, which is, basically interesting regions, weren't they, with Mike Townsend here talking a lot. And yeah, what can I say? lots of pictures too. Oh yes, I drove around doing one of those. Didn't get very far. I kept crashing it. And a spirited safari was the final one. This was absolutely lovely. I can vouch for this. You just landed. The sort of electric colour is what I refer to this style of colour everywhere. And. The first thing we saw, of course, was a huge naked body in the water, which acted as a bridge. We had to climb over it, if I remember rightly, to get to the island. Or maybe it wasn't quite that bad. But yeah, just lovely and colourful this place was actually, and there was got some pictures of dancing there going on. So if you want those blogs, as I said, it's hgsafari.blogspot.com for all the news on Safari and the roundups, and also HIE-OpenSim blogspot.com, which is keeping you up to date with the preparations for the Hypergrid International Expo, as it were. And as we mentioned in the Hypergrid happenings a few minutes ago, on Wednesday, Safari will be visiting a place called Genesis Roleplay.
Yay!
What a
Hello.
coincidence this is. What a coincidence, I say. Welcome, role players. Snappy Snaps, Metal Tango, and Lavia Levine, which I introduced earlier. And I'll start with you, Lavia. Welcome back in your case, because we've had you here before.
Well, thank you.
What's new? What's new with Genesis Roleplay Grid? That's a good place to start, isn't it?
Well, we've got a lot going on the grid right now. If I can put some of that in, the Wednesday we have our HG Safari tour with you guys. That's at the Lioness Den region, and that is an African safari setting, like an African savanna. I think people will really enjoy it. A lot of wonderful animals around, and most of them are animated. So it gives a very real living feeling to it. And some of like the forest elephants and the majestic African lions, of which I understand there are only about 30,000 left. And that really is what the region is all about, these endangered or extinct animals. It's very interesting to learn about it. October the 6th through the 8th will be at the Hypergrid International Expo. And then on the 15th, we have our Halloween Ice Cream Sunday Dance. And Tango here will be the DJ for that.
Hello.
Good. So you're the music. Are you, Tango?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Does DJing, or do you perform yourself or anything like that?
Yeah, I have a band. It's called Rakshaza, and I occasionally, while I'm DJing Inworld, I'll play some of the videos. So you get to hear the audio of some of the live gigs and stuff that I've done. And one of these days, I would like to get around to actually live streaming the live gig and somehow try to get it into OpenSim. So we can I can literally be in two places at once.
That's actually
Very
quite
exciting.
easy.
Yeah.
It's actually quite easy to do. I mean, I've seen musicians in the other place, I shall say. do that quite. It's like British Parliament, isn't it? Referring to the other place, meaning the other house. Yeah. I've seen that done. There's a couple of guys. There's one guy who just has the keyboard, the guitar, and everything all around him on his own, and just makes a big noise. I don't mean that badly. I mean a full sound, and he's up there on the screen, and then his avatar standing in front of the screen performing as well. So you get him in the big screen behind his own avatar, and that's quite an easy thing to do if you can stream to YouTube these days and just put it on the prim behind you. So obviously,
That's really the plan that I have for it.
If you're busy performing, you probably need somebody to actually do the pressing buttons for you, so you can get on with your performance.
I've got a plan.
You got a plan. That's what I love to
Excellent.
hear.
Yep.
Excellent. You got a plan. Wonderful. Right. I look forward to seeing some of this then, actually. I mean, in Second Life, but also in OpenSim too, we're very used to what I call the troubadours, who, not buskers exactly, but the guitar, one instrument and singer-songwriter kind of thing, which is sort of made for. It's much harder to stream bands unless they're all in one place. So the more bands we get, the better. I think that'd be wonderful. And
Well, I notice a
Absolutely.
lot of people when they DJ, they tend to like they kind of cheapen it a little bit. Like they're just singing over some, like an instrumental track, which is fine. I mean, it doesn't mean that they're any less talented.
yeah,
But I think to bring a live performance into OpenSim is a game changer. That's definitely an upgrade from what's actually out there and available.
yeah,
Yeah, that's true. It's a trickier thing. We're very lucky to have several musicians, singer-songwriters perform for the safari and take it even one step further, which is they come with us onto the sim that they maybe never visited before, a completely strange place. I'm thinking of Joao and Worley, people like that,
Yeah.
and set up and play for us. So yes, it does take it takes a certain amount of courage, but it's much appreciated when people do it.
I was it's an off angle here, but as I say, bands are much rarer. I was quite a fan of a band called the Virtual Live Band who played in Second Life. Well, I think they still do. And not Mambo, their bass player, is in Britain here, but their singer is in the States, and the other two members are scattered around the planet somewhere. And they managed to do it through a mixing system where they're in remote locations, but they're literally in sync with one another. Not quite, but they compensate by knowing what's coming, kind of thing. And they sound like a good old 70s guitar led band with a nice female singer, and very much of that genre. But the fact that the four people are in different corners of the planet, at the same time, and somehow make it work is remarkable, because you feel like you're with a band, not the music is one thing, but uh, the community that is a band, you know, is something
That's
else.
right.
Like
And that's a little bit like what these ladies are doing with role play, because it's making it more immersive. The music is so much more immersive when it's live. You feel like you're really participating rather than just maybe kind of listening to radio type situation. And the same for you ladies, because of course you're doing role play, which is truly immersive, and that's very exciting. I'm just curious, how did you get into it? Did you start doing this in Second Life and then come to OpenSim? And what was the genesis, if I can borrow the term, of your role play group? Maybe Tango could tell us.
Yes, I'm happy to tell you all about it. Uh, all right, so I started very young, and I actually started because of my mother here, Lavia. All right, she was doing a thing, and so I was about 12 when I started, and the internet was a different place back then. There weren't nearly as many restrictions and so forth, so it was just a matter of search and find. And so I got involved in several different platforms, and this role playing that I'm mostly familiar with is text based. And so a lot of people do like the immersion role play or the virtual role play, which is a lot of what's going on both on Second Life and here in OpenSim. But keep in mind that Second Life and OpenSim are not the only virtual platforms that are out there. There's MMOs, video games such as Elder Scrolls Online, World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy, etc. And there's role play that happens there, and a lot of it is people emoting, so they get their character, their avatar to do silly things and so on and so forth. And a lot of it isn't super text oriented. The role play that we do on Genesis Roleplay Grid in the Plymouth RP group is very text heavy. And the dirty little secret about me and my group, we're outsiders. We didn't come from Second Life. We came from a platform called IMVU.
Oh, of course, yeah. Similar.
Which was a competitor. Yes, it was a competitor to Second Life.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I remember when you guys, the grid kind of fell apart and you guys all, it must have been about 4 or 5 years ago, something like that. When it kind of collapsed and we got loads of refugees coming from the IMVU.
and I've actually brought in my crew. 90% of the people in the Plymouth RP group on Genesis Roleplay Grid is we're all from IMVU, and actually Snappy Snap could tell you a little bit more about that if you would like to.
Yes, and we have got some film running in the background too, which is well, we just saw a bit of the underground bit with the problems we found yesterday, of course. But yes, let's hand it over to Snappy. It's funny, by the way, and this is Lavia, you're the mother, Tango, you're the daughter, but Snappy's got a wonderfully useful voice compared with both of you, so I got it wrong at one point. Snappy, do tell.
So I'm just a friend of the family here. I came from IMVU with them, and I was the Tango likes to call me the golden retriever. Um, I was the one, like, I mean, she recruits a lot of people, a lot of great people, but I would go out and find even more people, and she's like, at one point, she's like, I don't know how I'm gonna be able to keep up with all these people. But yeah, when we were on IMVU, finding the town Plymouth, just doing all the research and stuff to get there, and then it was very limited on IMVU. I mean, we couldn't create exactly what we want to. We couldn't make it exactly look how we wanted it to. And so when we were migrating over to the grid, it was just mind blowing how, how you can just create everything and anything you could possibly think of.
Yeah.
I mean, if you found clothes on IMVU, you could only get it in that one color. On here, you can get clothing or tiles or anything in any color you want.
Oh, wow.
And if you can't
Pulling
find the right color, you can do it yourself.
That's right.
exactly, exactly.
How did you discover OpenSim? Was it one of you guys was here first, and then
Me.
Yeah,
Me.
it was. Yeah, she was here first. She kind of brought us over. Like, she was like, "Hey, you should try this." And so we migrated everybody over, and learning it was really easy, and it was just
Oh, good.
it was a good transfer over, and I am
It was
so
a
happy.
lot of work.
Yeah,
well, it's always a lot of work when you leave one place for another. Most of us have had to change grids.
Well, and one
At
more
least
thing
10
to say on
times.
that, right? One more
Just
thing to say on that
quickly,
for that migration is that when we did come over, not all of my crew made it. It was quite the adjustment because using OpenSim is not, admittedly, it is not user friendly. So I had to sit down with my team, and I'm like, okay, so here's what I'm thinking about doing. IMVU is trying to crash and burn because they're getting more into like the mobile app, and I'm like, ew, that's gross. We don't want that. So I'm like, hey, let's go look at OpenSim. And the price tag was my favorite thing, or rather the lack thereof.
Yep.
And so we sat down, we talked about it, and we all agreed to go ahead and migrate over to OpenSim. And then we came here, and I was learning things, and thank God for my mom, because I didn't know anything about this, and it is very difficult to learn, especially if you don't have somebody to teach you.
yeah.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, it is
And
quite a steep learning curve.
as you say, one of the major things here is that, unlike IMVU, you can. This is the problem with a lot of virtual worlds. They give you things, you can buy things, whatever, but they're static. Whereas here, you can customize things, and in Second Life 2, the magic is, it's all yours to do what you want with. Sometimes at a cost in some places, but generally speaking, if you don't like the color of your hat, you can change it, and
that's
you can
right.
collaborate with other
That's one of our
people.
favorite things.
And you can do it in real time, so you don't have to worry about getting something, then bring it along, putting it down, and then setting it all up beforehand. Everything is in real time here, which is Wonderful. We're looking at the bit now where you were guiding me through the underground catacombs here and
Hmm.
telling me I shouldn't get bitten. And for people actually watching the video, you're seeing it, you'll actually see various pop-ups coming up here because I got kicked out and sent home, and I got bitten, and I got all sorts of things happen to me while I was trying to film here. So
Yeah,
we've
it's that
got a lot.
time.
I won't even call them edited highlights. I'll just call them edited bits. But yeah. And now, which of you is
Well, how many,
behind?
Mal, tell us something. How many lives have you got left now, Mal? Because you went in there with 9. How many do you
Right.
have left?
-9,
Oh,
something like that.
Boy,
Uh,
as bad as that, really?
yeah.
Wow.
I was just going to say though, who is, is it you, Snappy? Is it you that are largely responsible for this bit, the underground bit? I know, Lavia has engagements elsewhere, shall we say? Whereas this is
You
very
know,
much your baby, isn't it?
I would love to take credit, but no, that is all Tango. She
Oh,
sat
yeah.
down and um she done all of the underground part. She drew maps, y'all. Like this lady sat down, drew maps to everything and coordinates, and I'm
Nerd.
like, she is just she's the brain baby. That's the brain baby right there.
Right. Well, sorry about that. Thank you.
No, it's fine.
What made you dream up this wonderful underground labyrinth and all its subsequent menacing things?
Well, menacing. My goodness. I didn't think it was menacing.
Oh,
Well, where,
why? Well, no comment.
where it came from, where it came from was it's used to screen potential role players. It's a tool used for recruitment. And so, there's a lot of people, and this is my philosophy on the whole thing, and this is really what I want to share in this interview today, is this philosophy. Okay, so we have a lot of other regions out there are malls and other little things, and I mean, and it's all good. I love to see all the creativity, and it's wonderful to be able to do that, and I'm so grateful to have a platform such as OpenSim to do all these creative, wonderful things. However, a lot of people run around and they go to these malls and they're like little kleptos, right? Little kleptomaniacs, just getting everything they can, seeing what they can take, what they can buy, what they can, whatever. And it's my big question is, it's fine that you do that, but what are you going to do with all those things that you acquired?
Well,
And so,
you're going to take time off to search for them in your inventory, which is now too big to handle.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Sorry,
so
sorry
yeah,
about
so that's no, you're fine. You're fine. I mean, we all go and grab all the things, and like I said, we're all little kleptos, and it's great that it's free because otherwise we would all be broke. But the big thing is, what are you doing with it? Okay, so a lot of people, they'll build like a redesign of their hometown or their actual home place or a farm or whatever. And I saw a region out there. I can't remember what it was called or who built it, but it was basically set up like Alice in Wonderland. So now we're barking up the right tree with something like that, where it's like, oh, okay, you can go and basically get your immersion on. You go through the things and you click on things, and it'll take you, like, teleport you to different places on the region. That was really neat. So then we come over to the Plymouth Crucible on the Genesis Roleplay Grid. This is our public region. So people who are role players and are looking for role play can go visit this. Now, there's no nonsense. Absolutely no time for nonsense. I've had a lot of people that they come in and they're just looking to shop, and it's like, it says it numerous times. This is not a mall. This is a role play region only. So if you're looking for a mall, don't come here. But they come there and they disregard. And I think that ignorance is very disrespectful, in my opinion. And that's why I set up all the treacheries, as you put it, or malice.
Yeah.
And I set those in there as filters. basically.
Yeah.
So you first show up and there's a spider at the very beginning of as soon as you port in. And that spider will kill you in about 90 seconds. And it doesn't kill you, it sends you back to your home region. The reason for that is, indeed. The reason for that is, I would have people that would teleport in and just start using their camera to cam around and, look for stuff that they can take. Obviously, they're not there to role play. They're not interested in a role play.
Yeah.
So they can go away. But I don't have time for you. Then if somebody does come in.
I'm looking at the film now that I did, and obviously that's exactly what you don't want. So obviously for the show, it's a different matter. But certainly people like me, the first thing we do is we go in camera, investigate, and then we come down to the things that actually intrigue them. But it means we don't walk around so much. It's like people who fly everywhere and never get to the ground. They miss out on so much of the activity. And I noticed that when Lavia took me through the underground bit eventually, when I still got kicked out loads of times, but it was simply a matter of following the signs. If you know what role play is, go left. If you're happy with this, go right. And so if you hang around, you just get kicked out. Whereas if you follow the path and choose to, if I think I'm right in Lavish showed me a bit where I made the wrong choice, and it was actually the wrong choice that got me sent home. So yeah, I can see that it is like an educational experience going through that underground labyrinth, spooky as it is. It's the acid test, isn't it? Unless you get past everything, you're not coming into this role play region. So yes, I can.
Is the vampire followers that I have, and so once you actually do start going, and it asks you the correct questions, because I want to know why you're here.
Yeah.
And if you come here for any other purpose other than to investigate a roleplay region, you're going to have a really tough time. So as you go and proceed to investigate, well, then, the pressure's on, because I have 3 vampire followers that have a firing prim on them that does second life damage. So again, if you're just kind of hanging around and not doing the things that you're supposed to do, they will also eventually get you.
Yeah. That's the biting bit, I guess. The thing I mistook as a biting bit, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, good times. And the whole purpose to that is, again, it's to get your immersion on. Okay, as soon as you res in, you're role playing, whether you realize it or not.
Well, some people argue that life is role play, don't they? But I've often said this before, so say it quick. When I'm talking about Second Life and want an illustration of something, or Open Sim 2 for that matter, I actually cite Roman, a recreation of ancient Rome. There is one in Second Life, and at first I thought, well, I don't want to dress in a toga and role play here. It's hard work, dressing in a toga indeed. But it suddenly dawned on me when looking around this place that, in fact, the role play, although lots of people role play different roles in that society, it was almost what's the word, an anthropological sort of look at the society itself. Whereas it was educational, because you were visiting something that was as good a recreation as they could make, and putting people into role play positions in that simulation made all the difference to just the buildings and stuff like that. So I realized there's a certain value to role play there, which is it's like actors on a stage performing a play.
Yeah,
you
that's exactly how it is.
Yeah, you get into it and you're happy to perform your little bit in. So there's a bit of an overlap there too. I'm not so sure about the vampire bit, but it's a very good example of people like me at first. Oh, I don't want to come into a virtual world to role play. I want to come in and meet people and build things. But in fact, I suddenly realised with Rome, particularly, that role play was very much an important part of the educational experience, really. So can do so much.
Tango.
And my entire crew is all role players, and for all intents and purposes, the Genesis roleplay grid is pretty big in numbers, and we're all role
How
players.
many are you, in fact, Tango? How many role players do you have on a regular basis, playing on a week-by-week basis?
Well, it depends. Some of us are pretty busy. Everybody has a life. Everybody has their own problems, so I can't say that it's consistently this many. But overall, total, I have about a dozen, and then usually we get about half of that regularly.
We got 15 active members.
Oh, is it? I thought it was 12. You're probably right.
Does that include the builders?
No.
No, I was just going through the Discord list, and there's 15 active. So it's a pretty good bit of us. And then, like Tango said, whenever we get some nights, we'll have a ton of us into roleplay, and with each person, they have multiple characters. So we'll have, Tango here's got like, I don't know, 20 characters, it feels like.
Don't even bother trying to count. I lost count.
It's only
Can I ask another question, actually, is that we're talking numbers there. I know that this is, I mean, obviously, unless you're going there to role play, you get kicked out. Oh, I like that bar here. But this is just the one simulation you've got that is public. You tell me you've got various other ones that are totally private. When you're giving me the role play numbers, is that for the whole region, including the private ones, or just for this one? And if so, I know they're private, but are the other private regions similar role play, or they got different themes?
All the regions that are there belong to the Plymouth roleplay group.
Right.
So that's all of us that are actively role playing for this specific storyline, which is including but not limited to vampires. We have actually several factions. We have our hunters, as is represented by my avatar today, and then there's the vampires and werewolves, witches, and then we have civilians. We have regular human civilians that
Get bitten.
have their part too.
Yeah, I get
Yes. Yes.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So the private regions are actually basically an extension of the same role play group. So
Yes.
you might start something here in public and then wander off privately to pursue an aspect.
Yeah, that's
of
correct.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Let's I'm looking at time now, and we've sort of figured about halfway through, whenever that is. Lavia has actually brought some slides, a slideshow that she's going to control herself that we can actually look at. So I think this might be a good time to switch over to that. And Lavia is going to sort of, rather than a discussion, she's going to give us a little monologue about the pictures we're seeing. So are you game for doing that now, Lavia?
I am. And I have a picture up here. This first one is when you arrive at the maze. Read the signs quickly. Don't stand around and waste a lot of time. Read the signs, answer them honestly, and move along. And that's done for the reasons that Tango said. Is
Yeah.
We just want people that are actually interested in role play. And this is pretty much the same thing. When you get up on the roof, after you get through the signs down below, there's a little necklace you can get that helps keep you from getting killed. And when you get up on the roof, there's cast cards and information and NPC models to help introduce you to all of the characters. And this shows more about the cast cards.
Right.
And has all the information you need. And that's, above each one of them, it's on the cast cards.
And also, if we go back to the cast cards there, what I set up there was the ability to, the little boxes down below, you can actually click those. Even if you're just a visitor, you can click those boxes and res the character's avatar. So
I did that with yesterday, wasn't it?
Yeah, we resed Kira.
That was right. Very cute. Little avatar.
Indeed.
That was a nice touch, yeah.
and this is the two primary clubs, the Creatures of the Night Club and the Crimson Drip Club, I believe it's called. And those are part of our open role play for people that would like to, come in and get a feel for the role play itself and see if they would actually want to be a part of it and get more serious about it. And then, of course, they would move into, if they make it in and they do their homework and everything that's involved, then they can enter the private regions.
Also, those two clubs are that is like the Plymouth Crucible region is designed and open to the public, right? So if you're playing a human, if you're gonna get on with your RP as a human, you have the option to go to the Creatures of the Night Club, and you should be fairly safe. And then, if you are more of the night stalking type, as in a yucky vampire, then you would go to the Crimson Drip Club. Now, that is actually what we call a blood den. So there's a whole story to that. Maybe some other time.
Yeah, I mean the the concept of storytelling is sort of integral to all this, and so tell me just a very quick question, which is sort of pertinent. When you consider what you're doing here and the role play, right? Do you consider it a sort of virtual immersion, like an installation, or do you consider it a game? And indeed, do you detect the differences?
Definitely the immersion, I would say.
Yeah. Okay, it was just
I would say it's both.
passing thought there. Yeah. Okay. So Plymouth Town again, the Central Square. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this is Central Square in Plymouth Town. It's several original builds. In fact, the clock tower, the parking garage, and the hospital are all builds of mine.
Right.
Yeah, okay, and this is the Hocus Pocus retreat. It's a hangout for our witchy woos, as they call them. I don't know, Tango, if you want to say more about it or not, or maybe Snaps.
Our Witchy Woos are our most recent addition, critter-wise, because the whole storyline is organized by chapter. So chapter 1 features our hunters, known as the St. Ledgers, and then we have the vampires and their little vampire coven that lives in Plymouth. And then, the next chapter I introduced werewolves, and then, the third chapter, which is the one we're in currently, I'm introducing the witches or warlocks or magicians or whatever you want to call them, but we affectionately call them witchy woos. And we also call the werewolves wolfy woos. It's our thing.
And call the vampires yucky vampires. They don't
Yes,
get
yucky vampire.
It sounds like
Because they are so
it
yucky.
almost sounds like it's made for kids. Don't say vampire. We say. Sorry.
The next one that we have is the Seliger Village. They are distant relatives and staunch supporters of the St. Ledgers. The St. Ledgers are like the main family in the storyline, and the Seligers are distant cousins of theirs. And these are just some of their homes in the village.
This is on one of the private regions, isn't it?
Yes, this is in the private regions.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's correct.
All right.
And this one is the St. Ledger Estate. It's the home of the hunters, and it's a rather large, wealthy estate. And I will defer to Tango on this to say any more about it.
The St. Ledger Estate, according to their family history, they came from Maidstone like 600 years ago, and they moved to Plymouth it was around 1430 or something like that. And something that I like to do with the whole storyline across the board is have some truth and some historical accuracy to the thing. So John St. Ledger was a real person in Maidstone, and he held the office of the High Sheriff just south of London. And he actually existed in the year 1430. So I basically plucked that man out of history and wrote a new one for him. So what ended up happening to him was he lost his wife. He had 2 children, a son and a daughter. And then he packed up his kids and went to Plymouth. And, that's how their history started in Plymouth, England.
Yeah.
think
And that is
many
the
people
estate.
who've
So that
lived in
estate,
Maidstone can relate to that, wanting to leave.
An
Oh,
irony
I
on
don't
that.
know. I can think of worse places. Sutton Coldfield, maybe.
Mm.
Sorry.
And
Got that
an
right.
irony on all of that with John St. Ledger, something that we discovered, um, and she did not know this going in, but I had been working on ancestry.com,
Yeah.
and we discovered that John St. Ledger is actually in our lineage.
Oh,
He's
Oh,
he
that's
is
fantastic.
he's like a 17th great grandfather.
I guess there weren't too many people around back then, so it's easy
amazing.
to trace
It's
your.
really
your
incredible
yeah,
that you managed to
really.
do that, Slavia. Well done.
So I
And
think,
this is some of our upcoming role play that we have, Fort Leodogard. Um, it promises to be a really good and interesting and amazing role play, I think.
looking
Fantastic.
often
So
to
you have big
Ireland.
plans for the future too then. You're
Right,
planning for more builds and more adventures.
right. And Tango, if you can see this next one on the upcoming role play, that's some of the stuff that you've been working on. I think the underwater stuff. So you might want to tell them about
right.
that.
Yes, yes. We're going to have mermaids. That's the next critter for chapter
Oh,
4 that we're going to be introducing whenever we get there. Mermaids,
that,
yay!
that's acceptable. Yes. Yeah, I think mermaids I would approve of. Sorry.
And that's it for what we
Oh, right.
that's
Okay.
it for what we have.
Okay. Well, let's move back to continue where the film was, and so I play that in the background while we carry on talking. Yeah, I remember when I saw all these buildings of the city, and I think the first thing I asked you was sort of, of all those buildings with multiple floors actually active, do you know, have vampires hunting around in all the buildings? But of course, you told me that most of it is actually just sort of decoration, so to speak.
Yeah, they're
So
filler.
The vampires in the actual crucible, they have a radius, so they only attack in and around the NPC vampires only attack in and around the
The
maze.
maze.
After that, like once they get through that and say they join the group, and then it'll drop band lines, and then they can go explore the rest of the region. That's when the actual text-based, story-oriented roleplay would occur.
Right.
I have another question for you regarding the other roleplay groups all across OpenSim. There's some over in AMB, Wildwood has one big one, there's some over in Kitely. Different grids have different roleplay groups, and many of them feel that it would be great if there could be some kind of support system. Obviously, you guys are all telling very different stories, and you live in different universes as far as the fiction that you're role playing is concerned. But is that something that you're interested in working with other role play groups? For example, maybe somebody finds some really good vampire equipment that is just perfect, but they don't really do that in their role play group because they're doing something medieval and it's different. But wouldn't it be great if you could somehow have the communication between the different groups and share resources and ideas about how to not make your stories, because of course that's a very personal thing, but have the extra resources that you need, and rather than having to spend, as one often does, a lot of time looking for very specific things that are required for a story that you're trying to tell.
I think that would be awesome, actually.
I'm surprised there isn't something like that around already. Actually, I mean, the sort of a generic role players group as opposed to a particular one on one particular grid. I guess
One of the
communicate.
big problems, and it's quite simple to imagine why, because one of the big problems is you guys are all very involved in what you're doing, and naturally it's quite an inward-facing activity, because it's quite an intense activity that you're doing, thinking of the stories, keeping the story consistent, doing your history, as was mentioned before, making things like maps and just getting everything right. And that doesn't always leave space to go to see what somebody else is doing. Also because somebody else's role play can, in a way, I'm sure, contaminate a little bit what you're trying to do, because you really don't want to get into their story if you're writing your own story. Would that be right, Tango?
Correct. And contaminate is a good word. You only have so much room in your brain for what you're doing. And I know, like, I am completely dedicated. That's actually one of my roles. Like, I've been role playing for a very long time, upwards of 24 years. And the majority of my quote unquote career that I have been role playing in, I've always basically ran my own group. I was at the head of it. There are many people out there that have other role plays, and I'm sure that they're great, but they can't manage it, and they're kind of just they're subject and victim to their own whims. And me,
Well,
I'm very dedicated.
obviously
I
everybody
don't.
does things their own way, but I was thinking, particularly over on Wildwood Grid, I think it's twice a year. What they do is they hold a sort of a fair and open day, and it can be easy to misunderstand what their intentions are. The open day is not intended that they want everybody to come and join their role play grid, which is similar to your own. It's been running I think for 10 years or something. The Wildwood Grid, the role play group, and they have an enormous story, much like they do over on Karina Grid, which is almost 15 years they've been running. Between when they were on Second Life and when they moved to OpenSea. But the idea of the Wildwood Grid was to have a place where everybody who's interested in roleplay, whatever you do, if you were into the Star Trek, look over on Third Rock Grid, again, a very complex story, or yourselves, or all these different groups, where there can be a meeting of minds, an exchange of resources, and then of course you all go to do your own stories in your own way. Everybody's got their own preferences as far as how tightly a thing is organized or how loosely. There's no judgment there. But what they would like to do is form some kind of federation, if you like, of role-play groups, just to make everybody's life a little bit easier. Because if you can get the resources, that frees you up to do other things, like develop your characters even further.
Certainly, if somebody is interested in role play and then wants to investigate things, to have a one-stop place where they can choose role play medieval, role play vampires, role play Star Trek, a landing place that guides them to role play venues, for example, is I would think integral, to the idea, because you want to get noticed, and if there's some kind of portal for role play, and that is advertised as such, then it's good for everybody, basically. But I'm thinking of the how many Star Trek role plays are there? We know from Savali we've been to so many of them. They're all individual.
The biggest one is but the biggest one is the Federation. I mean, that's a really old role play group that began in Star Trek. I mean, they have the scripting alone over there. It just boggles the mind. They've got 6 or 7 spaceships. Again, but that's very tightly organized. I mean, every ship has a captain. The missions are very organized. Everybody knows their place. Yeah. It's a particular style that appeals to a particular mentality, whereas others are a little bit more fluid. So, but that's the beauty of these things, that everybody can find a group that best matches their own personality, I think. Would you agree with that, Lavia?
I would agree with that, and also I know on our grid we're introducing 2 other role play venues, which is Amasango. It is on another planet, futuristic, ancient, supernatural, and one that I'm working on now, which is called Stag Hollow, which is the old Wild West.
So plenty of variety there, I'm taking. Okay.
That's kind of what we want on a role play
for down the road. Because with my team, we all like each other. We've been actually running the Plymouth storyline for about 2 years. And that's a big thing is you got to have dedication. You got to have the loyalty. You got to have, your active people who, not so much, okay, so they might not be able to come around a lot, but they keep coming around. And that makes them reliable. And one of the ideas that we have down the road after the Plymouth storyline completes itself, because every story has to come to an end, right?
I was just wondering
So,
that. Yeah, okay. So,
yeah. And so the next thing that we're discussing, me and the rest of my writers, my whole team, is one of the things we're considering is what's called a Nexus-based roleplay. Nexus is where you can have kind of like that landing point that you were talking about earlier,
yeah.
where it has everything. You could be medieval fantasy over here. You could be futuristic with the Star Trek. You could, be like with mine, which is modern supernatural. And then we even have the under the sea, as was mentioned in the chat. And the other thing about that, how we're going to go about this is it's about the organization. That's something that Thursday had just talked about. Like the Star Trek missions are really well organized. Organization is like paramount. It's absolutely paramount when you're doing this, and you gotta have your stuff together. So the plan down the road, we're talking at least 2 years down the road, is to initiate a Stargate SG-1 roleplay.
Oh.
And that's it's technically sci-fi, but what's great about it is that there's this team of Air Force people, and they go on these secret missions where they go through this Stargate that is a wormhole, and it spits them out on other planets. And so you could go to a planet that's medieval, so the Amasango. All right, we could go to some other planet, which is this other region, and we can custom build each region or whatever into this new planet that we're going to go and visit. So it's going to be ever changing and very, very fluent, and just all kinds of things to experience. We're all very much looking forward to it.
Yeah, wow.
It's going to keep our builders busy.
One thing that happened to me in Second Life very early on is I decided I wanted to with my partner to live in a treehouse, and I found a woman who was renting tree houses, on a region, but it was a medieval region. And once I got this tree house, I was actually told that I can't do anything that goes against the role play of the medieval region. So I concocted a whole story where up in my treehouse, I had my media screens and technology and all that sort of stuff. But my role, I decided I'm simply a wizard from the future. And it was funny. Of course, I thought they're not going to have this, but they did. It fitted in perfectly because they were, by being a wizard. It's like the Arthur C. Clarke thing about anything technologically advanced seeming like magic. So I was in a medieval setting, but I had a story. I had a story that allowed me to do what I wanted. Really, yeah.
That's
Sorry,
correct.
diversion there, but the person that I thought.
The great thing about roleplay in general is that it's about being creative.
Yeah.
What ideas do you have?
And I like the fact that because you answered the question I never asked, and that was that your role play is not these 12 people or whatever come in, they constantly role play, but they not only are they developing a story, but you see an end to the story, so that at the end of the day you will have told a story, not just by role playing, but there would be a finished story there. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end, and then you can move on to something related or totally unrelated. So I do kind of like that. It's like writing novels. You do a sequel or something new.
I'd like to see her take all this and put it into like a fan fiction or a book of some sort. I know we have Star Ravenhurst is doing that with her region, the Land of Sar.
As I've mentioned, I've ran several different storylines, different groups, and throughout my 24 years of role playing, I've done. I think one of my bigger ones was a Resident Evil based storyline, the video game.
Yeah.
And then I had a guild on Elder Scrolls Online, and one of my current officers actually was my co-GM for that, and that was the most recent thing I did before I started the Plymouth RP. And the thing that as much as I am organized and dedicated, and I do a lot of work, for the storyline with my maps and my murder mazes and all the other things, Like, I'm great, I'm organized, but the storyline and the role play is only going to be as good as your team, and I have the best team right now. Like, my people are what make the story, and the storyline writes itself through the characters. As Snaps had mentioned earlier, we all play multiple characters, and we're all writing for the same story. So the lore, if you will, for the storyline is kind of a guide. And then, as I mentioned, there's factions. So depending on which faction your character is in will determine the direction of their story. And then each of the characters have their own individual story arcs or quirks.
I used to love playing that. It must be very similar. This wasn't in a virtual environment, but you'd be with a few people, and you'd write the first paragraph or dictate it, and then somebody else would take over and continue the story. So there was no one author, but there was an author for each bit, and the paragraph would set the scene, and then somebody else would develop that scene totally where they wanted, which would not be the scene you predicted, And obviously, if you've got about 12 people doing that and going in a kind of circle, it's sort of it's more than just an author writing a story. You've got 12 different imaginations springing off each other, and it must be a bit like that. What you're describing.
Very much. Very much.
James, you are quiet as you always are, doing a wonderful job on the cameras. But have you got any particular questions you'd like to ask here?
Well, I don't mean to be provocative, but when you're talking about people coming onto the grid and not really being there for role play, I mean, did you find people coming on because they were maliciously intended, like griefers, or are they're just ignorant and don't know what they're doing?
I mean, I've pretty much seen all kinds.
Yeah.
A lot of them are people that there's a language barrier. Actually, I've noticed a lot of like Brazilian people.
Mm-hmm.
They pop in. They can't read the signs if they can't speak English. So,
that doesn't help, does it? Yeah.
And you don't encourage that kind of curiosity that they just might be visiting just to understand what it is, and then perhaps come back or bring a friend. You're not. There's no room for that within the role. I mean, obviously, it would be very rude if you're actually doing the role play, and somebody comes in dressed completely inappropriately and messes with you. I can understand anybody would object to that, but just somebody who's just happened upon the sim, they had no idea it was there. They're jumping around trying to get their bearings in a brand new place. You prefer they wouldn't come? Is that better, or would you sort of appreciate at least their curiosity and who knows, in a future moment, their interest to join, or maybe bring another friend to join?
about the Crucible and how it's set up, it actually deters certain things. Like I said, it's like a filter. So what ends up happening is if you have somebody who is, say, Brazilian and can't speak English, well, if they can't speak English, that means they can't read it, that means they can't write it. How are they going to engage in the role play? That is the purpose of that region. And so if they get that warning before, like from the region directory, it says this is a role play region only, and if they can't even read that, they show up, they're lost, they're most likely going to get sent to their home region. And it's I mean, it could be considered rude, but I think it's good time management. Like, you don't want to be here.
I think
this isn't for you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, presumably, if a group of new people come along and they're really interested in role play, but they don't speak English, they will simply start their own equivalent in their own language.
There's a lot of people who just like to explore open sim, not necessarily because role play isn't interested in them. They're just interested in seeing different architecture and just enjoying the creativity of others, even if it's not on a deep level, because they're not going to ever do a role. I mean, I'm a person like that. I would never do role play.
Yeah.
I do very much enjoy seeing how other people's minds have worked, how they've come up with certain styles of architecture, and how they've overcome certain challenges, because of course that's one of the great things of OpenSim, isn't it, when you're building. And I know Lavio can speak to that. The challenges of building an open sim can be enormous, and anybody who's done any building, it doesn't matter what kind of sim you go to. The people there can be doing something you would never be interested in being involved with, but you can still very much appreciate the effort that's gone into it. And of course, that's part of the beauty of the hypergrid, really.
Yeah, I mean, I stick my nose, or rather my camera, in everywhere, But as I was telling, as I was telling Lavia yesterday, this really isn't my style because I want to take my camera in the air and ban around and pick it all up. And so it's a bit of a challenge to get to these underground bits and stuff like that. But it's
Yes.
I mean, the other thing that might be rather good. Did you say you're going to have a stand at HIE? Or
Yeah, we're going to have a booth there. It's already set up, and it gives information about all of our different role play and all of the other regions on the grid. In fact, we have a total, I believe, of 22 regions.
Oh, right. So
Wow.
pretty,
Yes,
quite a
big
lot.
grid.
And I presume most of the time it must be land free, with not huge amounts of volumes of people
Well,
there, which must help too. But
yeah, for the most part, we don't have a lot of problem. We got our grid through Una de Calmasala, and when we have a problem, we just send him a message and say, "Hey, fix it," and he does. He keeps us running, and he's just awesome.
Wow.
so the other thing that
Amen
occurred
to
to me
that.
when we were talking earlier about the role play portal or something is because you are closed. Have you ever sort of thought about having an open day? I know, for example, educators on the more serious side of things. They've got a college or a school or something, and it's on a region that's locked out. It might be on the hypergrid, but locked out of it, so to speak. And then once a year they'll have an open day, so they'll allow hypergrid visitors in theory. Have you ever considered something like that as a way of drawing genuine people in the same way that you have a stand at the expo? Would you consider having an open day where people were allowed to come in and have a good look around and make a decision? It only last a day, then they'll be locked out again. But is that something you would entertain?
Tango?
Well, I mean, we did. That's why I listed the Crucible in the public region, and the maze, as treacherous as it might be, it automatically filters those people who, are, if you are there sincerely interested in looking for role play, then you'll be fine. You will survive the Crucible, and then you can engage in the rest of the role play. I have it set to join the group once you complete at least one of the 3 possible outcomes of the Crucible. But the people that come in, and they're not. Most of them are, as James had mentioned, they're griefers, they're trolls, they're looking to cause problems, they're looking to shop. There's a language barrier, or whatever the case may be. And the way that I have the Crucible set up is to basically eliminate that. And it's a self-serving recruit poll, and it is open to the public. It is in the region directory, and it just makes my job easier.
Yeah, we've had visits from good old Priscilla.
Oh, Priscilla.
Priscilla Kleenex.
Priscilla.
I don't know if there's anything that's more risky than having the safari visit.
I was just going to say.
We do know how to crash places.
We know how to crash grids.
But admittedly, though, come on, though, last week, that whole thing, and Mike will say, he said, I knew it was a bridge too far when I told you guys to use those physical leaps. Because, and I'm like, well, yes, but now at least we know your grid won't crash.
Right.
We didn't crash the sim.
We didn't.
We did manage to lose all our clothes, but that can happen.
Well, I think I've got to interrupt at this point because I think we're rather running out of time. I know James has an alarm clock that goes off very shortly, I think. I don't know. But, of course, this leads into the fact, of course, that Safari is coming to you this coming Wednesday. So presumably we're not all going to be sent home the moment we land, are we? You're going to...
No, that's the northern... Our northern regions are all the builder regions, and they're open to anybody. It also includes our mall region is up there. They're open to anybody to come in and visit, so there won't be any problems there. It's
Yeah.
just the role playing region that Tango runs, and several of them are marked private. There's only one that's open to the public.
I
I'm
must
now
say, I'm
looking-
really looking forward to this trip. This will be the third week in a row that the safari has actually gone on safari, because we went to see Kayakers Safari Sim, where you can shoot those dinosaurs and chase after those, of course. Do you remember that?
I'm gonna
That
get
was
some of
big
those
fun.
too.
Yeah.
I know, pretty cool. And then last week, again, we were Tropicana Safari region, so it's getting to be a bit of a theme. It's a great thing. It's delightful. I'm really looking forward to it.
Mal has the right hat.
He does, yeah, he's locked and loaded.
Right.
I was going to dash into the dinosaurs, but I can't find them. They're in the library here somewhere. Right. Okay. Yeah. So actually, oh, where am I now? I've got lost now. I had a wonderful shot that I thought was fitting to end on here. Oh yeah, there we are. If you can see the still frame there, it says "You died."
You died.
So I am hoping
wow.
that I will be resurrected and not have to suffer that indignant thing again on Wednesday.
No, you'll be fine.
There you
You'll
go.
be fine.
There's
Yeah,
a lot of wild animals that might kill you, who knows?
Oh yes, yes, of course.
Yeah,
Other
just
places.
don't try to pet them or feed them.
Oh,
Don't ever
That's
try to
always
pet
good
or feed the
advice
vampires
in
either.
any reality.
I love petting animals, well, especially furry ones.
If
We
I
had a
could,
whole- we had
James
a
will
horrible thing.
probably sit on them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
if I could, very quickly, can I give a quick shout out to just a couple people?
sure. Yeah, please. Do.
I'd like to give a shout out, of course, to Una de Cal, for he provides the grid for
Oh,
us,
yeah.
and
Right.
to all of our
Una's amazing.
wonderful, amazing players. We have great role players, and to Aries Halo Star,
Yes.
Roland Francis, Glenn Expletive, and our own Dusty Falls, who's done a lot of wonderful script work for us. You'll see a lot of that script work on the safari with the animals.
Right.
And to all of our builders, they've been an immeasurable value to our grid. Designers and decorators, especially Star Ravenhurst, Ezra Miller, Dusty Falls, and Levon and Hemi Skywind.
Wonderful,
Nice.
wonderful. That's quite a crew. That sounds like the whole dozen.
Indeed.
No, wonderful. It's sort of nothing in Open Sim or even Second Life for that matter is worthwhile without a community, a whole group behind it. It's sort of
Absolutely.
it's what makes it the difference between somebody's solo thing, and the collaborative spaces. So wonderful. Okay, well, I think we're going to have to call it quits, but of course we will see you all again on Wednesday. I don't know if it's just me. I think somebody's gone missing.
Oh yeah.
I think
Yeah,
Snaps.
Snaps vanished.
Is she
Well,
on voice?
she had some things going on, so she had to bug out. As I mentioned, we all have lives. We all have our own set of problems, but we do what we can to show up when we can.
Yeah.
True that.
Okay,
That's
well,
true. Yeah, we
in her absence, I'd like to thank Snaps, and I'd like to thank Tango or Metal Tango to give you your full name. And I'm really keen to see your band if we can get that in World somehow. And of course, Lavia Levine. But we'll see you all on Wednesday anyway, which is absolutely great. So thank all of you. I'd also
Thanks for having us.
Mm-hmm.
thank James too for all the technical wizardry. And,
Oh yeah, it's so fun to be here. Thanks, Mel. Thanks to you.
Yeah, and some a little bit of critical thinking there near the end. And of course, always to my co-host and co-conspirator, there's Ember.
Let's conspire every week. Yes, thank you so much, Mal. It's been a great show again.
Yeah. We will return, I think. Yes, we will return sometime indeed. Same place, same time is what I meant to say next week. For another edition of the Inworld Review. And do join us on Wednesday for Safari. We meet at either OS Grid or the Avacon Grid at the Safari Clubhouse or Safari, as Thursday mentioned earlier. And if we don't see you then, we'll see you next week. Thanks for watching, everybody, and special thanks again to our guests. And it's I've got my catch line. I've got to remember to do it.
Yeah.
I wish everybody a good morning, or a good afternoon, or a good evening, or indeed a good tomorrow, depending on wherever and whenever you are. I've forgotten all about that this season, but I'm starting up again. Bye for now.